Welcome back to Wolverine State Podcast. Now let's get on about the Michigan Wolverines as they take on the Indiana Hoosiers this weekend. And I don't think I need to spend a whole lot of time on this game. Really just been an unfortunate season for Indiana. They've dealt with so many injuries. Quarterback position, looks like they're going to start a freshman this weekend. There's nothing really about that offense that scares me based on the tape that I watched. Defensively, they had a few good games, but they're starting to reel a little bit. Struggled in the last two games. Maryland scored at will on them. I'm not worried about Michigan winning this game. I think Michigan will be ready to play, and they'll have a nice bounce back from Michigan State. I think they should be able to beat the 20-point spread as well, just based off the way Indiana's been playing. So what exactly do I want to see out of Michigan the rest of the season? The biggest thing is the linebacking core and the safeties really struggled last week. I already made a video covering the film on the Michigan State game, but I had some time to reflect on it. And I think Mike McDonald's scheme might not fit the players that we have right now because it's very, very different from Don Brown's scheme, who oftentimes brought safeties up to help with a run. I think if you're Josh Ross, you're used to having these safeties come up and help you with the run, but that's not the case in a McDonald's scheme. So I think Ross just has too much responsibility, and it's just not a good fit for him. Ross is a good, bruising, physical linebacker, but is he a guy that's going to read the hole? Is he a guy that's going to run sideline to sideline really effectively, get off of blocks effectively against the great teams? No. And I'm not trying to knock the guy because I think he plays hard and he's a great leader for this team, but it's just not a good fit for McDonald's scheme, and I'm starting to wonder if that's the problem because when McDonald was the defensive coach in Baltimore, Patrick Queen had great instinct, obviously has great instincts. Queen can read whether it's going to be a trap, whether it's going to be a pass. He's just at a much different level than Ross in terms of reading defenses. So maybe that's what McDonald needs to work on is basic fundamentals. And maybe he sort of took Ross's abilities for granted because Michigan's one part of it is when you're facing teams that you're better than, your defensive flaws don't really get exposed. But once they face Michigan State, Ross wasn't able to read the blockers and he got caught up in the wash way too often. Just too many times he was out of position. And Kenneth Walker, the second he gets past that first and second level, he's gone. And then another thing, I really want to see the safety position improve too. I know Moten had an interception last week, but Moten and Hawkins, both those guys have to play better. You got to look at the quarterback's eyes, just basic little things. Again, for the safeties too, this is a very different scheme than Don Brown's scheme. So my hope is that maybe it's just taking them a little bit to adjust to the scheme, or maybe they're just not a good fit for McDonald's scheme. And McDonald is recruiting some talent that'll help out. I looked at Michigan's 22 recruiting class. They do have one 3-star linebacker coming in, but obviously the recruiting cycle is not over. Signing day obviously has not come yet, so we'll see who they get. But hopefully, that's what I'm hoping right now. I just want to see improvement from these two positions as the year goes on, because if we're going to have any chance against Ohio State and whichever team we face in the bowl game, and even against Penn State, the back seven, specifically the linebackers and safeties, they have to play a lot better. But really, just they have to know where to go on the field and be able to make basic reads. It's one thing if they're not fast enough. It's another thing if they're out of position. And when you get out of position against Ohio State, they're going to take it 80 yards for a touchdown, just like Michigan State did. So this is just what I just want to see it get better as the year goes on. And then maybe next year, if Harbaugh sticks around and if McDonald sticks around, then they recruit some players that'll fit their scheme. The other thing I want to see for Michigan as well, I'm starting to wonder about the play calling. And I know I sound like a typical slappy fan saying this sort of stuff, but you cannot run the ball up the middle 3 times when the other team is loading the box, especially Michigan State. They were doing a great job getting their linebackers in great positions to make tackles. And the fact of the matter is our red zone offense has been abysmal, and there's absolutely no excuse for it, considering the offensive line that we have. We have a very good tight end in Eric All, and we have good, tall receivers like Cornelius Johnson. So there's absolutely no reason we shouldn't be able to score in the red zone. I'm starting to wonder if the play calling duty should change. Maybe guys should stick with it for the rest of the season. But in the future, if you're Jim Harbaugh, you gotta be aware of these things that's going on in the field and going on up in the booth, because that's really the biggest thing. These coordinators have got to see what's going on in the booth and make these adjustments based off of what's going on in the line of scrimmage. And maybe as Cade McNamara grows up or grows a little bit more, I hate to say grows up because he's already a man, but once he becomes an upperclassman, so to speak, then maybe he can start making some calls and readjust the play based off what type of defense is lined up. But the fact of the matter is, I'm concerned that Gaddis isn't seeing what we're seeing upstairs, and instead isn't making the adjustments based off of what the teams are lining up in defensively. So I feel like the last few games of this season will be an audition for him for next year as a play caller. So that's really what I want to see improve. I want to see the linebackers improve, the safeties improve, and I want to see the red zone play calling improve. Or else I think changes are going to have to be made again. And whether that changes Jim Harbaugh, whether that is some of his assistants, will remain to be seen. But we still have 4 games left, and I'm going to give this team a chance. I know last week was super frustrating, but I mean, you still got to give them an opportunity. And Michigan definitely is not out of the playoff race if they can commit to playing their best football. But obviously I have my doubts, but it can happen. So we'll see. All right. Thank you all for listening to this segment. Last up, we'll get on about the Detroit Pistons and their interesting situation with Cade Cunningham and Killian Hayes. Stay tuned here on Wolverine State Podcast.